everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How MSPs Can Elevate Customer Cybersecurity Conversations. I'm Treva Stankard, and I work in channel marketing here at Titan HQ. Thank you all so much for joining today. I'm delighted to be here with two brilliant masterminds, Mark Lamb, founder of HighGround IO, one of our valued customer or MSP partners, and our host, Dryden Geary, Marketing Director at Titan HQ. Just before we get started, I'll do some quick housekeeping and then I'll hand over to Dryden and Mark. So today's session will be recorded and we'll be sending out the recording after a couple of hours after the event. So feel free to share with whoever you like. There will be time allocated for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them throughout in the question panel at the side, and we'll get to as many as possible. If we miss any, we'll contact you directly within 24 hours with the answer. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Mark Lamb, founder of HighGround IO. Mark is also CEO of M3 Networks, one of our valued MSP partners. So Mark founded HighGround based upon a problem they were having internally, has gone on to expand this product for all MSPs. So we're delighted to support Mark on this journey. So give a context about Mark and his story. So Mark is an engineer and loves solving problems. And as an MSP, they struggle to sell cybersecurity services to their clients. So Mark got to work trying to solve this problem. Fast forward 4 years and we have HighGround.io, a platform designed to help MSPs sell more cybersecurity and reduce their risk. And yes, Mark is still running his MSP business at 30% year-on-year growth. I don't know how you do it, Mark. You're very welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Just a lot of hard work, really. That's how.
Hard work and no sleep.
Yeah, I get that a lot. People think I sleep half an hour a day or a couple hours a day, but
coffee. So we're also joined here today by Dryden Geary, Head of Marketing here at Titan HQ. Dryden, thanks so much for taking the time to host today's webinar. It's great to have you here.
Delighted to be here today, Treva, and particularly excited to share Mark's story, which we're discussing before we came online today. A lot of the problems that MSPs run into, I think the guys and girls who are brave enough to go out there and try and build internally themselves and are clever enough, I think they end up being the roots of a lot of great products in the set at the moment. And this is a path we think Mark is on, and we're really happy as a business to support him. Our core function fundamentally is customer protection. This is the rationale that we're hearing in business. And we think this solution that Mark has and this product that Mark has going forward is going to be a fantastic framework for MSPs to sell more cybersecurity, and incredibly happy to support them on it. It's a tough journey, as we know. You're starting and we're just talking, you're trying to do so many things, but the concept and this product are really, really good, and we're very, very happy to introduce it to the MSP community.
Absolutely. So Dryden, we'll get started, and if you give us a quick overview on Titan HQ, and then we'll hand over to Mark.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, believe it or not, we're 25 years in this security business at the moment, and this is actually our 25-year birthday this year, believe it or not. And the company has really, really evolved from 8 to 10 people company. We've got 170 staff now across all vectors, sales, marketing. But the biggest investment really over the last 2 to 3 years has really been in development and looking at product development, threat intelligence, our platform, which I'm going to talk to after Mark talks to you today about his product, and really, really looking and driving towards efficacy in these products. So, highly effective products that bring margin for MSPs in an efficient manner and are easy to use. These have been the bases with it. So 25 years sounds like a long time, but it flies by. I think one of the hallmarks of the company has always been our global footprint. Okay, so we started on the west coast of Ireland. We've got an office in Shelton. We've got a lot of remote workers all over the world now, and the business started really with a lot of American customers, but we've evolved into a truly global business. And what that allows you to see is it gives you aspects of business that are different from country to country, but also from a threat intelligence part of the world, you get to see a bit of everything that's going on, and that has stood by us. As I said, up to 170 people, which is pretty incredible. From an MSP perspective, we probably have at this stage 3,000 MSPs using the product set every single day. And I think where we're going, and I don't want to spoil the webinar later on, but we're moving much more from a point solution vendor, which we've been for our 25-year tenure, to a platform play. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on, Treva.
Brilliant. Thanks for your Jordan. Some little stats there for anyone interested. Then we'll go into yourself, Mark. If you tell us a little bit about HighGround, what it is, how the idea came about, and a little bit more about the solution.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, and thanks for having me. Yeah, so as Dryden said, we're an MSP, have been in business for quite some time now, for 14, 15 years. At that point, I was starting to forget. But right around before COVID, we were really having a challenge starting to sell cybersecurity to customers. And the slide summarizes that up quite well, right? It's the same frustrating conversation over and over again. And we thought there has to be a way to solve this problem, and we really tracked it down. We believe that it's a sales problem. Yes, there's no shortage of products in the market, right? We know that, and there's so many options out there. But if we can't, I think this problem has actually gotten worse since we started this project, because the glut of product in the market is just increasing and increasing. But there's a choke in that the customers are only consuming so much of it. We've obviously had some major things happen in the world since that time, particularly with the economy, which is having quite a significant impact as well, and cost increases, which less money for, more money is going towards keeping the lights on, and less money can then therefore be spent on additional things. And security is one of those things that if you weren't spending on it before, then it's easy to just continue not spending on it. So really have to demonstrate to customers the value in spending cybersecurity and trying to help solve that issue. And that's where it came from. So next slide. So yeah, we've got this tagline, saving MSPs from security sales hell, because that's definitely what it feels like. And this is a screenshot you can see here from building security packages within HighGround, and we can go into that a little bit more as we go through the slides. Next slide. Yeah. So I call this MSP paradox. So 51% of SMEs, so small businesses, chose their MSP due to lower costs, which is pretty demoralizing. We all know the customers are cost sensitive, but what makes this an interesting statistic is that 46% also chose their MSP due to the increased security offering that MSP has. So there's been quite a shift in the market to people talking about a security first MSP, security focused MSP. And the stats definitely suggest that that's true. But what these stats also suggest is that they're not necessarily prepared to pay a lot more money. They're also looking for it at a lower cost. I would argue that actually that the problem is not so much that they want it for cheaper, but they need to be able to see value. And a lot of MSPs struggle to demonstrate the value in what they're doing, and therefore MSPs are just going on cost, because if they can't derive value, if they can't understand value, then they just look for lower costs. So we have to be able to demonstrate the value of what we provide, and that's not just cybersecurity. That's in everything that we do, but security is really the big one at the moment, and it has been for quite some time. Yeah, so this slide here is just about the traditional MSP. So when we set up in business back in 2009, IT support was definitely core. We were one of those MSPs that we never did break fix. We were always managed support. There are still some MSPs out there that are doing break fix, but MSPs themselves are predicting, and this is research that was done by Acronis just recently, that MSPs themselves predict that cloud computing and cyber will be their primary revenue source in just a matter of years. So support and the things that we've always known ourselves to do, that is no longer going to be where the majority of revenue comes from. That goes to show just how enormous the industry is growing. The most recent research by Canalys suggests that the cyber industry is growing at 14.8% per year, which means if you've got a customer who hasn't spent more on cybersecurity since 2021, they have to increase their security spend by 50% just to maintain the growth rate within the industry, or else they're falling behind, which is quite an incredible statistic. We've got some some resources available to you after this demo. You can download them. There's a lot more information on that as well. But point being that if MSPs do not get on board with selling more cyber and getting the customers to buy more cyber, then they are going to become fundamentally extinct, because core support is not going to be, it's not going to pay the bills. So many MSPs say if we can get our support revenue to cover our overheads and everything else is extra, everything else is gravy, well, those days are disappearing quick. And the revenue source, the mix of revenue really needs to diversify. So being able to sell cybersecurity is going to be of is going to be of utmost importance. So if that's the case, and if the industry is growing so fast and security threats are so big, why is it so difficult to sell cybersecurity to customers? I'm just going to point out what many of you will know already, right? Customers are spending a fortune on IT. I'm going to call it IT, but I've written here technology, because the cost of everything is going up and there's just more and more technology that customers need. If any of you have tried to quote a customer for a Microsoft Copilot license lately, it just makes you realize just how much money is going into things that are, well, some may consider it luxurious, some may say productivity tools, but there's just so much money to be spent on technology that the customer has to draw a line somewhere. As I said earlier on, MSPs are really failing to show that value in increasing security spend. Customers often feel like if we don't spend any money and nothing bad happens, I made a good decision, right? Because I saved money. Likewise, if I spend money and nothing happens, then it must have worked. Why do I need to spend more money? We almost need an incident to happen in order for the customer to realize that, you know, there's a reason to spend more. So it's got there's these unfortunate things that happen in cyber around the investment of money and the reality of something happening that just make it harder and compound the problem. They also don't understand really what they're investing in. The word cybersecurity is just a bit too vague. And the media has done a lot of damage in this area by people have become very numb to cybersecurity. When you open up your phone and you see another cyber attack in another large organization, a government agency, national infrastructure being compromised or targeted, most of us get to the point where we think, well, you know what, if they can't even protect themselves, what's even the point in me trying? And so customers start to become very numb to the fact that this is just normal. And so that is also going against us and it's not helping. And the reality, well, all that's being said, the customers cannot afford to be as resilient as they'd like to be. They have to make tough decisions. They will have to accept risks, and it's not up to us as the MSP to make those decisions for them. The customer has to make educated decisions, and we have to realize our position as a partner here to facilitate that decision. And so all of these things are working against us. They're all a headwind that are getting in the way of us being able to make that progress. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. And these are the problems that we've been dealing with for thousands and thousands and thousands of hours now that I've been spent dealing with this and building HighGround, is how do we have that conversation? And how do we help the customer understand, you know, where their money is actually going, what the value in spending is, what it is that they need, and how can they make the best decisions for themselves, and how we can support them in doing that.
I think, Mark, it's very interesting, if I could jump in on that point. The indifference, you used a really interesting word there, you used the word numb, which I thought was a fantastic selection. We had an MSP advisory board 2 weeks ago here, and the feedback from the, in particular, US-based MSP cohort, and they range from everything from MSPs who traditionally are SME strong houses to a number of MSPs who have 80,000, 90,000 seats. So we got a little bit of everything. But that feedback came through very, very strongly that with the SMB and the SME market at the moment, there is a slight indifference and, to your term, numbness on some of this stuff. And areas they may have acted faster on in the past, they're kind of looking at it going, well, you know, I'm reading the news, to your point, and my social security number is here and my log on to Ticketmaster is there, and, you know, kind of so what? And I think there's a real, and it's the essence of this webinar today, there's a real responsibility on us as first IT professionals, secondly cybersecurity professionals, to really illustrate easily for them how we can overcome this problem, and to nullify the numbness, to put it into your terms there. Like a stat that really jumped out at me was, after a breach, 60% of SMEs will go to the wall inside 6 months, okay? So the actual key message is, no, you don't have the money to really, really have enterprise level solutions, and that's why you need an MSP, or you need an advisor, you need a company that can help you, that can show you from the thousands of vendors, this is actually the best setup for you, okay? But most importantly, you can't afford to have the breach less than anyone else, because 60% of you're going to hit the wall if this happens. So I think it's a key theme today. Numb is a brilliant word. We're going to take that going forward in our marketing markets. It's a good way to talk about it. But I think as we talk more now about HighGround, this is a mechanic for us to overcome this indifference and numbness.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing, right? Like you said, your data is out there. I mean, isn't it quite demoralizing when people say, well, I had a customer say to me, well, they've already got my details anyway, as if it's the same person doing it over and over, right? It's like they hacked LinkedIn how many times? They've hacked, you know, like banking on institutions and, you know, multinational organizations, governments. They think, well, what's the point? They've got it. You don't need it again, right? So, but that's we've got to kind of fight against that, because, well, we all know why, but that's difficult when, as I say to people all the time, customers are weighing up the decision to invest in cybersecurity, not against, say, buying a server or buying new PCs. They're genuinely weighing it up against things that you can't even imagine. Well, you can if you think about it, but it's just not immediately obvious. For example, do we buy a new machine for our factory? Well, why are you comparing that against cybersecurity? Well, because it's a small business, right? And it's do we invest in cybersecurity to protect ourselves against something that might not happen? Or do we invest in this machine that allows us to increase production by 15%, which we know will relate to, say, 500,000 in revenue? Well, I'll take that option, thank you very much, because entrepreneurs by their very nature take risk, and business owners and SMEs have to take risk. They're used to doing that. You know, if we approach security in the SME space the way that we enterprises approach it, which is all about risk management and people that are employed by these large organizations to make sure these things don't happen, SMEs play by a completely different set of rules. So we have to realize that that's what we're up against. We're not up against other solutions in the industry necessarily, other providers, but actually the customers trying to achieve other goals, and spending on security is just getting in the way of making that happen. So it has to be, you know, fit for purpose, and, you know, cut the cloth accordingly, as we say, to make sure that we invest at a sensible level, but they don't overinvest. I think a lot of customers feel that MSPs want them to overinvest. Okay, so I'll get started. Right, so this screen here is the technology spend dashboard, and what you can see here is all the data that we pull in from your PSA. So whether it be ConnectWise Manage, Halo PSA, Synchro, and Autotask, and we map that data across all of these main categories so that the customer can see where all that investment goes. You can also add spending that's not with you. So what we really want to do is show the customer the complete technology spend, not just what they spend with us, but what they spend overall on technology. Because
so Mark, when I log into the product or I start as an MSP using this product, this is the first screen ostensibly I'm going to see. Is that correct?
Yeah, no. The first screen you'll see is you'll have to go up to integrations and connect up your PSA. And once your PSA is synced, you map it, and then you come to your customers that get pulled in automatically. Then you'll see all their spend mapped like this. Yeah, so this is your jumping off point.
Okay, very good. And we've covered the major PSAs at the start, Mark. I know the big players are in play here.
Yeah. ConnectWise Manage, Autotask, Halo, and Synchro. We're also working on integrations with finance tools, because there's quite a number of MSPs that are not integrating, that are not using their PSA quite as it was designed. So they're just going straight to like Xero, QuickBooks, and other tools like Sage, and just doing their invoicing right out of there. So we're just putting the finishing touches on the Xero integration at the moment, and we'll be doing the QuickBooks one next. So if you're not using your PSA properly, I'll say properly, if you're not using it as it was designed, you'll be able to get the data in from other sources as well, because
Fantastic.
nobody wants to sit and punch the numbers into this by hand. So often this is a revelation for customers, right? They've never seen their technology spend quite this way. VCIO tools are quite good for doing budget planning, but they don't always necessarily show this kind of view of the world. So this helps the customer see where that goes. And really what we want to do is show them just how little is going on cybersecurity. This is a real customer of ours, so this is real data. And this is a company of about 35 employees. And you can see here that, I can't see the percentages, but it's about probably 6%, 7% of their overall technology budget is going on cybersecurity. So if we can just skip to the next screenshot. Yeah. So the next thing is, how do we make up these KPIs? So this is a cyber score, and if we click into this, we can go through and attest what technologies the customer has. So you can see here, they're using web titan for web protection, spam titan for email, Sentinel-1 for endpoint, and ConnectWiz Automate for patch management, and that might be all they've got. So if the customer says, well, we spent 3,800 on cyber, like, where did it go? What did we get? Well, you got these things, but there's so many more other areas, and they're not all on the screen here, but there's so many other areas that they need to be investing in. Often as MSPs, we go straight into the tech and we get the customer so confused, they don't know what we're talking about anymore, and they lose sight of the bigger picture, and they don't understand the context around what they spent. How much of that was actually on cybersecurity, and therefore what actually went on. So this really helps us have that conversation, as well as talk to the various different technologies that are important that the customer might need, that would help them. But it's not all about technology. If we can just go to the next screenshot, we've also got the governance and resilience. So incident response plan and disaster recovery plan and cyber insurance, aligning to frameworks, a number of others. These things are all important for the organization to be able to recover. And I like to talk about one of my customers called Richard, and I was talking to Richard using HighGround, and he said to me, of course I have an incident response plan. I says, oh, can you send it to me? He says, no, I'll just phone you, that's my incident response plan. And I said, that's not a plan, right? It's a plan in your head, but that's not an actual plan. So we talked a bit more about what a plan is and what disaster recovery plan was, and he was like, all right, okay, I understand, I get why I need it. And he actually bought one. And this guy doesn't spend anything on anything, but he actually went and bought a DR plan and a incident response plan because he actually understood. So again, it's not a stupidity thing, it's an educational thing, but it's a value thing, it's understanding the reality. And sometimes we just need to have the conversation in the right way. And now he understands that these things are all part of his governance. Then they sit in the same bucket as the rest of the things that you see here on the screen. So if we could just move to the next slide. This here is a screenshot of you adding subscriptions. So if the customer has connectivity with people that, has a spend with other vendors, it's not you. So in this example, we've got a TalkTalk lease line and a HubSpot subscription, like that's software that they use in their business. The reason this is relevant is because often when you go to QBR with a customer and you're getting beaten up for the amount of money they've spent on IT, they're taking that number off the P&L, right? Whatever's in that bucket for IT. And the thing is, as we know, a lot of that stuff isn't with us. They spend money with other vendors too. And it's a bit of an accidental benefit. It wasn't the reason we built this feature. We built it so we could capture all the spend, but one of the benefits here is you can actually start capturing what money they spend with other vendors so that you can target that revenue yourself. So if you get to know that they have a lease line and it's got 6 months to run and you've got that captured, HighGround will keep recording that. It'll add all the spend from the beginning, and it will keep adding it every month. But you will get to know when that subscription comes for renewal, and you'll be able to target that for a chance to win that revenue. And oftentimes it's a double whammy because you can say to the customer, we can do that for £100 or €200 cheaper, but you can put that money towards your security instead. So you don't need to necessarily increase your net spend, but you can redistribute that budget to get more for your money. If we can just move to the next slide. This is just a screenshot from our governance and resilience. So when we're talking about things like IR plans and disaster recovery plans and cyber insurance, we can actually store all of the documents here. We can do reviews here. The customer can log in and they can do it. So if the customer says, no, thank you, say, okay, well, look, you can have a log on. You can see what you're not doing. You can see what we're doing for you. Everything will be registered and logged within this portal, and you can take responsibility for what you want to do. We actually give you free incident response plans, free disaster recovery plans, free information security policy, so the customer can do it themselves. When they realize what's involved, then they'll probably not want to. But for you, it's very good because you can charge quite a lot of money to do this kind of work, and we've got it all templated out, so it just makes it really easy. Basically fill in the form, you don't have to do too much thinking. Next slide, please. I feel like I'm presenting on the COVID-19 daily presentation here, looking for my next slide. This is the one for cyber insurance. So if your customer does have cyber insurance, we've got this module here which will allow you to record it in great amounts of detail. And it's somewhere that we're actually thinking of using AI to take the customer's policy and actually being able to pull it apart and automatically populate this. And why this matters is because you want to know what the obligations are. When the customer signs up for cyber insurance, there's a whole load of obligations they've got to meet, or if that policy is not going to pay out. So it's really important for the customer, but it's also a great sales opportunity for us as MSPs to say, look, you've signed up to this, your policy is not going to pay out unless you have it, and it can really help us sell based on compliance. Next slide. But HighGround is not just designed to show them, it's also designed to help you build your packages. So this is a screenshot from our template library. There's over 50 different services that we've built on the product, and we've built them into packages. So you can come in here and search for technologies, search for different types of services. They're all pre-written. You can import them into your account and get up to speed really, really quickly. If we go to the next screenshot, we've actually got one showing you combining multiple services together into a package. So this is an example of a package you could download in HighGround automatically. And it shows the shape of the security aligned to the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is really good for customers to understand the shape of their security. Someone said to me, what do you call it? I literally call it the shape. I know that's not the technical term, but customers understand that language. If we can say, look, you're really strong in protection here, but you're quite weak at response, you're average at recovery. And obviously the goal is to try and pull them out further and further to the outer edge. The way we do that is when you build your services in HighGround, we'll ask you a number of questions about how that aligns to the NIST framework as an MSP service offering. So for example, is this an EDR service? Is this an advanced endpoint protection product? What is this thing that you're doing? And that's how it knows, so that when we show the customer their current posture versus what your package is doing, they can visually see the difference. We don't have to talk technical. We can keep the conversation high level, but be confident that we're aligning to framework, which people take a lot of comfort in knowing that these are best practices and standards that we're aligning to, and that we're not just making it up because we want to sell something. And it also shows the customer the spend. If we can go to the next slide. So there's another example of an MDR service. So you can see all the details. You don't have to think about that. I'll leave it for you to guess what service you think that product you think that might actually be. If we click next. This is another screenshot of a range of full-blown packages. So these packages will include anything from 5 to 15 services within them. You click and import that, it'll all come in a matter of seconds. Next. This is a list of products as well. So this is just a few more screenshots of the things that are there that you can import. And next one. Yeah, so that's the demo. Well, it's not a demo, it's just a run through the screenshots. If anybody wants to see a demo, reach out to me. There's going to be a free resource that we're going to give away at the end of this call. My details are on there, but you can also get me on LinkedIn as well. But the thing is, for customers, you really need to show them what their security looks like. You need to talk money. You need to show them where that investment goes, and we need to help them see the value and to help them buy and to help them take the risks that they need to take. If you think that customers are just going to do what you ask them to do, I'm sure you know by now that's not going to happen. So by engaging them in this way and making it visual and making it easier for them, it definitely helps move the needle and get moving. But that's me finished. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble on. As I say, reach out if you want to see a demo or ask any questions. I'll pass back to Dryden.
Yeah, Mark, there's an element of this that always jumps out at me. And the first day you demonstrated this product to us, it jumped out after about 10 seconds. And I've been on the other side of the fence here. I've purchased IT at a fairly decent level for a number of years in a previous life. And when I look at the graphical parts of your product, Mark, the bit that jumps out at me is the ability to benchmark. Okay, so I saw one of the examples you had there was trying to sell to the legal community. Okay, so we're trying to sell to a typical what is actually an SMB, but a legal house with 25 to 30 staff. Potentially, you're selling there to a system admin type person who's just in there, is trying to keep the show on the road, make sure everything is secure. I think the strength in this product to be able to turn around and say, your cohorts look like this and you look like this at that current moment. I just think it is such a strong selling point. And I know as a buyer, that is something that makes my ears twitch. It's okay, hold on, you're telling me someone in my cohort is putting 30% of budget into, let's just say it is EDR, and I'm totally exposed there. I'm definitely thinking about that night when I'm going to bed, and I'm thinking, wow, am I going to get in trouble for this? Is my stance okay here? I've never talked to anyone who understood this before. And I'm just wondering, in your time with the product now, have you seen that? Has benchmarking helped when you talk to these customers?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, getting as the product grows, one of the things that we want to do is that really start getting the industry data. So being able to say like the average law firm is spending, 26% more on cyber than you, but you're over invest. Not only they're spending more than you there, you're over investing in, say, telecoms. Why is that, right? People like that Me Too stuff. Where we're seeing great success already though with customers is customers saying, "Wow, I didn't realize I was that bad." Like that's what people say. Like, and they'll often say, like, I know you talked about this stuff before. I just didn't know what you were talking about. I'm like, well, why didn't you say? Like, well, because I don't want to look stupid. And I think that's the bit that we forget, and I just thought you were trying to sell me something. I just, there's lots of other things going on. I just came from a meeting 1 week ago with a customer who are laying off staff. This is a really difficult one, right? They're laying off staff, and we were telling them they need to invest another £1,000 a month in cybersecurity. Now that's the reality of what we're dealing with in the SME world, right? And he said, how am I going to explain that to our staff? And I said, well, and before I could answer, he actually answered the question for me. He says, well, I guess because it's necessary, right? What about the other half of the staff who stay here? What if we have a cyber attack and we can't recover and they lose their job too? And he answered the question, but he was just kind of talking very openly about it. But that customer, in fact, is spending, they're laying off 6 staff, but they're spending another £1,000 a month in cybersecurity. That sounds too good to be true. I'm not making it up. It's genuine. It's because when they were disturbed enough, but they understood well enough that, yeah, we're spending all this money, and they were expecting to come into that meeting asking for a discount, and have gone out spending another 12 grand a year inadvertently. But it's purely down to understanding and realizing just how bad this is. We talk through, you don't have an incident response plan, so we won't know what we're doing if we're going to respond. Disaster recovery plan, you won't have one of those. He was going to buy cyber insurance, and he said, well, there's no point in buying that, is there? Because who's going to insure us like this? And what's the point? I've got an email he sent me 2 days later saying, what's the point in investing in cyber insurance over investing in actual security? And these are the things that we deal with all the time as MSPs, right? The conversations that we have. But that was a very switched on customer, don't get me wrong. But we're having unbelievable success. Our account managers are saying, I just can't believe the way these conversations are going. And it's just
I think, Mark, as well, the alignment with the insurance and compliance side of things for this tool is a key element. We're hearing a lot of noise coming through where a managed service provider really is bringing some services in that they mightn't traditionally have wanted to bring in, but they're bringing them in because there's a compliance need, there's an insurance need. And I think if you see that graphically in your solution here, and it's illustrated, I think it's a great selling point, to be able to say, hey, you're going to struggle to get insurance full stop anyway, if that's where you want to get to. But from a compliance perspective, if you look here compared to your peers, you are way off the ball. And I think for a lot of these things, we're not saying that the product or the exact moment you reveal this is going to be a sales opportunity. I think we're planting, though, thoughts, doubt, future sales potential into these guys. So like even the example you've given, it takes them a couple of months to come to it still, but you need something to hang your hat on, and that's why I really, really like what you're doing here.
Yeah, no, definitely, 100%.
Do you see that percentage spend? As a cybersecurity professional at the moment and vendor, I was a little shocked. 4% typically from an SMB, and I thought it was a great example. 30-person business spending 70K sterling on technology, and they spend 4% on cyber. In your experience, Mark, would that be indicative of where we're at across the UK and Ireland, let's say, at the moment?
I'd say so. I'd say that's on the money. Like, I mean, we do see them quite a bit higher. I've got customers that are spending 0.5%. It isn't when you use HighGround on its own, you will see higher numbers than that. But the reason you're seeing higher numbers is because you need to get the spend to spend with everybody else, right? Once you throw all that in, find out what they're spending, give them a log on and let them add it. You'll be amazed at how much money they're spending with other people that you knew nothing about, and then it really dilutes it down. Yeah, I'd say 4% is on the nail for what's pretty average, and it shouldn't be. It's too low.
Yeah, I think an interesting, we'll have a look at it internally here, is to see, is there geographic spread in that? So MSP customers of ours operating in the States, I'd love to see, is it 3-4% or is it higher? And also I think MSPs in certain cohorts, So if you're in, regulated health industries, law, I think we may see better results there. But it's a good place to start, Mark. And as always, we'll try and move it up a couple of points, and hopefully we'll move it up a couple of points by using HighGround.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Treva, if we want to roll on, yeah, we're going to just take a minute or two as well at the bottom of the webinar here, just a quick hat tip and update from Titan HQ on where we're going. I found Mark's presentation there just so insightful, because this topic is coming up all the time. The indifference is probably a strong word, okay, but customers beginning to question, I think, a little bit more their cybersecurity spend. And I think using frameworks in the past, such as Cyber Essentials, NIST, etc., it was a mechanic, and I think Mark has definitely extended that further now into something much more sophisticated that we can hang our hat on. And I think it's got huge legs, and we're very, very happy today to give Mark an audience to talk and introduce his product. Also, in our world, what's happening at the same time, we've been busy too. Our developers have been kept busy, just like Mark's. And one of the big pushes we have in the business at the moment is I've put this slide in front of you to demonstrate the history of our business more than anything. And we have always been, even though we've had multiple products, we've been a point product solution provider more than anything. And what I mean by that is, if you look on the screen here, we have our key product, Spam Titan, which has served us and our customers very well for 25 years. We have our new ICAS solution, which is competing with Avanans and Abnormals and Inkeys of this world. Fish Titan, which we're having huge success with at the moment. Encrypt Titan, our encryption tool, Arc Titan for archiving, our DNS filtering solution, and Safe Titan. But traditionally within the business, we've sold these as point solutions. So you come in, explain your problem. So I need to encrypt A, B, and C. I have this number of users, and we'll provide that service as a single product. The future, if we can roll to the next slide, Treva, if you wouldn't mind. Is our platform, which we've made huge yards into, and any customers that are using Fish Titan at the moment will be in the platform as is now. And this is actually a live example here that we have that Treva is showing you. So this is the Titan HQ platform with Fish Titan in there. We have phishing simulation in the platform at the moment, which is actually free for all MSP users until the start of September. And we have the email archiving product built in there, Arc Titan, as well at the moment. Fast to be followed by security awareness training, Web Titan, Encrypt Titan, and some elements of ST in due course. But if I was to say one thing about this platform and one thing about where we're going as a business, our strategy really is behavioral-based efficacy through multiple solutions, okay? So a business that for a long, long time sold point solutions, one by one by one by one, what have we learned over the last 2 years and through this period of investment in our business, that actually our strength and our strategy is based on the efficacy we can provide by looking at all the solutions and what's happening. So put this into simple English for me, Dryden. What we're talking about here is, if we have the ability within our DNS filtering product, Web Titan, to see that you're a huge New York Yankees fan and you spend a lot of time on the fan page and reading forums, whatever it is, or somebody within your business does that. When we send a phishing lure to you, there's no point in us sending a Boston Red Sox lure. We're going to send you a Yankees lure, okay? And we're going to extrapolate that relationship to all endpoints and all customers that you're using. And we're going to extrapolate it using the machine learning, using the large learning models that we've built in. I won't use AI, such a buzzword at the moment, but fundamentally, machine learning. We are taking all of those intel points from the different products across the hundreds of thousands of customers that we have, and we're bringing them together into a central source to really, really provide behavioral-based efficacy across all the products. So what you're seeing in front of you graphically there is a first representation of that. The Fish Titan product at this current moment, the phishing simulation, and the Arc Titan product. But as we get to the end of the year, the full product set will be in this platform, all integrated with Microsoft, and everything talking to each other in the back end, providing us, as we said, with this behavioral-based efficacy. So this is a kind of a first look at it and a first run through the strategy and where we're going. But that's where the business believes it can deliver its core value to MSPs. So Treva, you know this one well enough, that screen there, but for a lot of people it's probably new. I think I would encourage customers to come and have a look at the Fish Titan product, use their free phishing simulation for a couple of months now that they can, and definitely as you delve in here, you'll see the power that Fish Titan is bringing at the moment.
Dryden, Mark, thank you so much.
We got overtime, Treva. That was one of our key concerns. We did not want to go overtime today.
We're good on time. We have time for a few questions. I'll always like to leave a few minutes at the end for questions, but also leaving a few minutes for people to go into their next meeting. So we'll wrap up shortly before 4 p.m. But yeah, thank you so much for you both. Like, it was so interesting seeing the HighGround solution, and I'm sure it's going to go amazing paces. Mark, fair play to all the work you've put into it. So we'll welcome questions from everyone in the audience now. Don't be shy. We'll try to get through. We'll get through a couple anyway. And as I said at the start, if there's any we don't get to, we'll contact you directly. And as Mark mentioned, in case I forget, we have a couple of handouts in the handout section, and there's one particularly you should check out, the Increasing MSP Security Sales ebook. So take a look at that. We'll also be sending another ebook after the webinar that Mark has put an awful lot of time into. Remind me how many pages and the title of it again, Mark?
So about 35 pages.
35 pages. Nice homework.
Yeah, it's a guide it's a guide you could send to your customers to help them understand all these things you talk about, so, and the need for them. And to be honest, it's just an invaluable resource for just saving yourself a ton of time, sending them links and trying to explain things, and you can give them this guide and it tells them all about it. And it just saves you a ton of time, and it really helps them understand. So it's something you can use in meetings. You can send it during you can send it after account reviews. You can send it if they want to know about something that you're trying to sell them and know that it's all there and it's all glossy and looks great. I think.
Great.
It's
I didn't build it.
I had a look through it as well, Treva and Mark, and I must say I think it's a really, really great piece of work. 34 pages, 35 pages, Mark. It's some work. Little Bible.
Yeah, thanks.
As I said at the start, do you sleep at all, or?
Yeah, I just know, MSPs are so busy, so it's us included. It's having stuff like that. It's just golden if you can send it out. It's rare that you find it. So hopefully I've taken one for the team. If you guys can use it, all the better.
So we'll send everyone the link for that and where to download that after the webinar. So just a couple of questions coming in. Let's see. Let's see now. How, this one's for you, Mark. How do you recommend MSPs approach selling their full tech stack to customers?
I thought, without wanting to be shamelessly promoting myself, use HighGround. Like, that's genuinely what it's been built for. It's designed in order to build it to standard, build your microservice. So we use this model of building your microservices. So anything that you sell, so to Dryden's point about point solutions, if you're selling Spam Titan or Fish Titan, don't sell that product. You sell a service, right? We call it a microservice. It can be the product on its own, but anything as an MSP that you sell, you're managing, right? That's by the very nature of what you're doing. Build all them out, build them to standard, and then build baselines. So like your absolute minimum security or your recommended security, those are like your anchors that you use, and then add on different services to meet different needs. So if you go into if you're using HighGround and you can trial it for free, you'll see that you can download these things and put them into your account. So we've already got like ones that are built for legal companies, ones that are built for healthcare companies, ones that are built for construction companies. And all you're doing ultimately is you're trying to take the sales and the technical teams, pull them apart. You want the technical team to deliver the technical services, irrespective of what the customer's paying for, and you want your account management and your sales team to be able to sell that without having to worry that the technical team are going to get in the way and hold them back. So extrapolate them from one another and know that the technical team can manage those tools and those products, and the sales team can sell to what the customer needs. And that way that you don't have this like bespoke stuff going on across your entire client base.
Brilliant.
Hopefully that answers the question.
I'm sure it does.
I'm putting a slide together of actually that I'm going to share soon, which will actually visually demonstrate what I've just explained.
I thought a question coming in here, and I thought the same. I'll just go back to this slide. Oh, wrong way. Sorry. Where's it gone? It was the kind of the cybersecurity shape. Where did that kind of concept come from, Mark? I thought it was really interesting, looking at all the different areas. Like, where did your thought process come behind that? Is that kind of trends you've seen or things like that?
So that shape that you see, that is in fact the NIST cybersecurity framework, or it was until they released 2.0. It still is. I've got a good friend of mine who actually worked on the framework, and so we have a lot of conversations all the time. I'm very, very prone the framework, but it's particular. The reason that we chose it is because it's very visual. So if we can create a really good visual around a framework, I mean, it's golden, right? Because we can align to the framework, but we can make it very visual. What NIST didn't do was they didn't create this concept of plotting a chart and going further out on the axis. That was just a bit of creativity that we came up with. But ultimately, the framework is made of controls, and you can align what you do from a service delivery security perspective to those controls. We can then show maturity on the chart, and that's how we can create a shape. So if you've got lots and lots of bases covered on protection, we can go really far out on that angle. But then the question is, well, what do we have on the other? So, and as they combine, we create these unique shapes that a customer can understand.
Yeah, I think a customer understanding this, Mark, is the paramount point. Okay, and as technical as we are, you're dealing with a customer who may not understand the technicalities of it. I think the ability to be able to give a visual like this is just so key. I actually think it's the main strong point for me of the tool. The ability to show a CEO or an owner of a business to say, look, in very, very plain English, my friend, if you look at this graph, you're hugely exposed in the identity area, okay? And that then we can kick off a conversation to that. I think visually it looks great. It's golden, as you said yourself, and I think that's going to be one of the keys. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to give MSPs the mechanic to kick that conversation off and to explain things at a different level, as against just give me more money to do this. We're trying to bring a layer of explanation in here, and we're trying to declutter this problem a little bit for these people.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if you're doing co-managed, like you were talking about earlier, Dryden, if you're doing co-managed IT, and you've got an IT manager in there and he's trying to do it all, often that person kind of becomes like, you know, that being that guy or girl is a really tough job, because the expectations on you are insane, and because there's no understanding above you, and you've got this partner, and you know you're pulling your hair out. If you're like me, you've got none left. But if you're going through this process, and if you can go to, like, I'll take the governance and resilience module for as a very basic example. If customer says, well, we don't have a disaster recovery plan, how do you expect me to write one? How do you expect me to audit it? You need to give me more resources, and I can show you. You know, you're saying, oh, I'm already giving you X thousands of pounds per year. Well, look, this is where all that money's going. It's not going towards doing that, and I'm doing all these other things. How do you expect me to do more with less? Because that's the world we're in right now, right? Do more with less, and AI is not going to solve the problem either. So being able to talk in those terms and have that business case, and what's coming next in HighGround is actually being able to capture the organization's objectives, their obligations and their requirements, so that we can really create line of sight between where the business is going and what they're trying to achieve, or what they must do with where we are, so that we can really dial that in and be like, well, this is really going to screw that up, but this is the impact if that happens, so we can really make it real for the customer. It's all about trying to talk that language to the customer that they can understand in every possible way.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Absolutely. Just another question for you, Mark. Just one here. It says, how do you get started with HighGround? Can you advise, or where can people find out more, or get started? Do you do demos or anything like that, or talk us through that?
So you can sign up for free. You get a 14-day trial, but I would really suggest you reach out, because in order to, you know, we are new. We're not a Silicon Valley startup with all this fancy tech that takes you through it and on board you. It's a complex tool, and there's a lot of resources I've got that I can give you that will really help you, like the one that's given away here for free, and the one that you can sign up for as well, that will really help you get on board. So yeah, by all means, if you want to try it out for yourself, give it a go, but I do recommend And I'm an MSP owner too, right? So I'm not going to give you a hard sell if you do get in touch. Or genuinely help you on board, and you can join the other group of MSPs that are using it too. They can tell you what they're doing and how they're getting on.
Great, thanks for that, Mark. One for yourself, Dryden. With Microsoft investing so much money in technology, where does Titan HQ position themselves, and where does the platform play into that world?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Microsoft really, in our relationship with Microsoft, and I think if I said the cybersecurity vendor relationship with Microsoft is pretty much, we see them as a partner. We see our products and our solutions absolutely having to sit seamlessly within their environment. And with this platform, it was one of the, I'd say there was 3 cores when we built it. We want this MSP first. We thought about MSPs and talked to MSPs, talked to our advisory board to make sure everything we did there was correct, okay? As always within our business, our first role is customer protection. It's the core rationale of why we're here. And then probably the third point was, let's make sure this can talk easily to everything within MS. And I think what are we seeing? We're seeing that actually we're an additional layer on top of Microsoft. So I'll take FishTitan as a very interesting example at the moment. And we've run some really sophisticated testing across this. And it typically really, FishTitan's core isn't stopping the Jack and Jill normal stuff that you see coming through, okay? The reason FishTitan is in place is to stop sophisticated attacks. It's particularly strong at the BEC side of things, okay? So internal attacks, so three of myself and yourself are in the office and all of a sudden, somebody gets into my account and they're sending you, passing mails through to you that are dangerous internally, that the traditional SEG just won't catch, okay? I think that openness to BEC attack has been a big problem for customers as we've seen over the last couple of years. And I think the ability for FishTitan to catch that, what's exciting for us, we're using multi-layers, we've got our large language learning model in there, we've got the machine learning element of this working, but at this moment, we are actually catching significantly more than E3. So I think I saw a stat the last day, a customer, 40,000 emails a day, we were catching 35 to 40 fishes over and above what E3 could catch. And I can speak honestly and say 18 months ago, that wouldn't have been the case with some of our product set. We would have looked at E3 and thought, oh God, E3, it's expensive. They put a lot of money into it. Security is good there. But we are seeing attacks now that Microsoft don't catch. So to answer the first question, where do we see ourselves with it? We see ourselves hugely aligned. We see them as a partner, getting more and more important in the MSP space. It blows my mind actually how big they're getting there, to the point of where they're nearly going to go into a monopoly situation at some stage, you would have thought. But we see ourselves enhancing their product set. We have always believed in layers. That's what the platform is from. And if I could just reiterate what I said at the top of this, the strategy around platform and what we're seeing for our customers currently is behavioral-based efficacy through multiple solutions is the mechanic for us. That's what we think is a differentiator for our business, and that will sit strongly within a Microsoft environment.
If I can just add to that, Dryden, I think that one of the things, let's put my MSP hat on, one of the things that's really effective that you don't necessarily see so obviously is the ability to remediate really quickly. So you take an example of, Johnny's just had this really bad email, and now who else got it, or where else did it spread, and been able to get on top of that really, really quickly. That is just at times drain, trying to deal with that and not being sure and being worried that you actually got them all. That's where tools it really helps.
It's funny when you talk, our understanding sometimes it all comes to depth of understanding of how an MSP is running their business. So a great point in that would be, all the time MSPs have talked to us about the importance of margin. And our ears have been open and we've listened to that, but we've correlated margin with price. So we've always straight away said, yeah, we'll change the price, we'll bring the price, But actually margin isn't always because of the price of our product. Margin is also, for an MSP, it's training my staff on using their product. It's tickets coming in because of this product. So you bring in a new product into your world and all of a sudden your ticket numbers go through the roof and your guys are working their ass off to try and get these things fixed. And also bad stuff happening. So all of a sudden I've got truck roll because someone's got a phishing attack, something's gone on, a piece of malware has exploded in the wrong place. These are also margin conversations. It's not just price. And I think as we've learned and we've grown within this business, we've definitely have more of an appreciation of the multi-layered aspect of margin. And that's something we're really, really trying to work hard with MSPs on at the moment.
Yeah, trying to stop the margin getting eroded rather than,
Exactly. That's a great way of putting it, actually.
Oh, yeah, spot on. There's so many tools now in the industry that do that. They just eat your margin away. The margin is a game of Pac-Man. You buy that product and it just destroys your margins trying to look after it.
It's hard enough to get in the first place, Mark.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll probably wrap it up there to give everyone a few minutes before their next meeting. Dryden, Mark, thank you so much for the discussion today. Really appreciate your time. I know you're both so busy, so it's great having you here. And thank you everyone for attending. Again, I know everyone's so busy, so appreciate you attending. And just mention that we'll be sending out Mark's guide shortly in an email, and we'll be sending out the recording. We'll also be sending out a survey, so let us know what you thought of today's session. And there you can mention if you'd like to learn more about HighGround. So yeah, thank you all so much, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
And thank you, Trina, for all your work on this. Well done.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Take care, Mark. All the best.